Hey, everybody. Welcome back. Today, let's talk about a very interesting element of speaking and listening that I call the conversational cycle. This is a technique that I picked up listening to a podcast called The Art of Charm, and let's look into it. In short, a conversational cycle emphasizes three repeating aspects that make a conversation: a question, listening to an answer, and then providing some kind of statement for connection. Let's examine each one individually, starting with questions. And I think that rather than me explain everything, I think that AJ from the Art of Charm can help us talk about the conversational cycle. So, why are questions so useful and important in conversation?
And the power of the question is that it automatically allows the other person to talk about themselves, which, as we know, is everyone's favorite topic. So now, by using a question, we're not searching for what to say next. We're giving the other person an opportunity to share with us and listen to their answer. That's the important part.
It's true. A lot of psychological research has shown that people's favorite topic of conversation is themselves, and they're even willing to forego rewards or to take quote unquote pay cuts in order to spend some time speaking about themselves. So, one of the best things that you can do in a conversation is to take your ego out and replace it with thoughtful questions and by listening. Listening is the second very key component of the cycle. And here is why.
We listen with our eyes and our ears. What I mean by that is, while I'm asking this question, I'm looking at the facial expressions and the emotion on the other person's face before I'm really thinking about the answer that they're giving me. And it's in reading the emotions that we can find emotional bids. These are moments of excitement or enthusiasm that the other person expresses in their answer. These emotional bids might be a raise in volume, right? Might be a big smile appears when they're excited to tell me where they're from or what they do. And it's cluing in on those emotions and allowing yourself to then share that emotion back with the person in the form of a statement.
So I find it very interesting that when we listen, it's about more than just tuning our ears into the words that we hear, but also really using our eyes to pay attention to the emotions and the inflection of the voice and trying to find emotional bids. What he means by an emotional bid is an indication that someone is very excited or interested in a particular topic. These are the kinds of topics that when you discover them while listening to somebody, it can make for very compelling and memorable conversations because not just about the words being exchanged, but about the emotional connection. So you're probably thinking, all right, Ian, cool. I should ask good questions and I should listen to people. This is super basic information. Yes, I agree. But the most compelling and interesting thing that I learned from this conversation cycle is the idea of following up your listening with a statement of connection. When I was raised, I used to always think that questions are the most important. You want to hear about the other person. You don't want to give away everything about yourself. You don't want to talk about yourself too much. However, AJ has a different take. Let's see what it is.
So most of us, we ask a question and then we're ready for the next follow-up question. But it's the statement that is the key to the conversation formula. So it's question plus their answer equals a statement. And it's in that statement that we now allow the other person to understand us too. So we're not just searching for topics, we're not just searching for answers, we're also sharing back. The most powerful statements we can make are we statements that allow us an opportunity to connect with the other person, not tell them just about ourselves. So we statements allow the other person we're talking to feel like they're our friend already. They're not a stranger. It's about us together.
This is why statements are so important in a conversation. It's not just about how much information you can get from the other person or how much emotional catharsis you can receive, but it's really about a connection. It's about sharing. I think all three components of this conversational cycle are crucial. So let's go over what happens when one of these elements are missing. When you don't have listening in the conversational cycle, you have poor listening, which should be self-evident at this point, why it might damage a conversation to not be listening to what the other person is saying.
I know the most important part is I just have to ask good questions to engage the other person and then rely on listening to find those topics that they're interested in, that motivate them, that inspire them, and then connect on that topic.
If you're not listening, you cannot find what they're interested in, and you cannot connect. Connection requires both for you to share part of yourself and to listen while another person shares part of themselves. What happens if you take out the statement? Well, if all you do is ask questions and then listen and then follow up questions and then listen some more, then what you have is not a conversation anymore. It now becomes an interrogation.
And I know there's a lot of advice out there that says questions are bad, right? If you ask too many questions, it's an interview process, and it's kind of taking information from the other person. And it's not that questions are bad, it's what happens after the question.
It's not that questions are bad, it's that what happens after the question is just as important. If all you do is listen and load up a new question and then ask and then listen, the other person is eventually going to say, okay, enough questions, bye-bye now. So unless you're offering a little bit of yourself, it's something that the other person can connect with, then you're not really having a conversation. You're conducting an interview, which is very different. And finally, what if there's no question? Well, at this point, you might run into a dead conversation. Questions are the engine that drives people to speak. So without that, conversations can die off quite quickly.
So now, by using a question, we're not searching for what to say next. We're giving the other person an opportunity to share with us and listen to their answer. That's the important part. So a lot of people come to me and they want to know what to say. AJ, what are the words? What do I need to be saying? When in actuality, we need to be listening.
I like how he ties everything together here. When you don't use a question, you are putting way too much pressure on yourself and the other person to think of all of these great ideas off of the dome. When in reality, a question is amazing because A, it takes the pressure off of yourself to talk about yourself, and B, it gives the other person a signpost, something that they can really dig into and something that you can listen to and find an emotional bid and start to supply statements of connection. So it's nice to start with a question and then using some very intense listening with your ears as well as your eyes, being able to produce some kind of statement of connection. Now, this all sounds very abstract. So here's an example that I found on the Art of Charms blog. So, what do you do for a living? Oh, I'm a firefighter. Wow, so cool. Do you like it? Yeah, it's great. It's what I've dreamed of doing since I was a kid. Impressive. You know, only 5% of people end up doing what they dreamt of doing as a kid. At least that's just a statistic I made up because it sounds right. I think it's awesome you're living your childhood dream. My childhood dream was to be a superhero, and it didn't quite work out. Unless you count adopting a dog as heroic. Not saying that I'm a hero or anything. Oh my god, I love dogs. What kind of dogs do you have? By allowing space not only for questions and listening, but also to offer some kind of statement of connection, you can really have compelling and engaging conversations with other people, with your students, with your coworkers, with your friends. So I hope that you found this useful or interesting, and I look forward to seeing you in class next time. Until then, cheers.